Anyways, oh, here we go. Everybody, we're live. Happy Friday. It's October 16th, and you're hanging out with my community manager, the community built by, for, and managed by community managers. As always, you can chat along with us over on Twitter, where I know a bunch of you are hanging out right now at hashtag CMGR Hangout, so thanks for joining us on a Friday. You know, if you love what you're seeing today and you'd love to play along, give us some ideas, join us, please head over to our website at mycmgr.com. You can click on Participate and fill out a form, and Dom, Sherry, and I get those forms, and it's really your ideas. It's what you want to talk about that we talk about each Friday. So speaking of that, what do we have for you this week? Well, today's topic is launching your community career. You know, recently we've talked about what it's like to look, or we discussed what to look for in a community role. But it's been almost a year since we talked about some 101s, and so we're going to go a little back to the basics. We have three kind of real broad basic questions we're going to ask our panelists here. And we encourage you, if you're watching right now live from Twitter, please tweet us your questions, especially all the new people. If you're new to community management, you just have some questions, don't be afraid to ask. We'll bring your tweets in, and we'll try to answer them. And then we're going to fill some of our time just really talking about CMX that just happened out in San Francisco. And I know a few people here have had attended that, so we're going to just get a little bit of their key takeaways. So with that, I'll let everybody introduce themselves, starting with Sherry. Hey, Sherry.
Hey, Brew, and everyone else. I'm Sherry, and I am the community manager at Magento. I cannot get my lower third to work because apparently I forgot how to use Google Hangouts. And I also co-produce CMGR Hangout here with Brew and Dom.
Awesome. Hey, Raj, how are you?
All right. Sorry about that. I'm still haven't mastered the mute button. But yeah, so hi guys. My name is Raj Nijjar. I am the VP of Partnerships and Community at Yext, based out of New York.
Hey guys, I'm very sorry for the noise. This was a much quieter coffee shop probably 10 minutes ago. I'm Dom. I am as well as a co-producer, co-host, I should say, here with Sherry and Brew.
Oh, that's me now. Sorry. Hi, I'm Crystal Coleman. My lower third is also not working today, so I'm at That Girl Crystal. I'm currently writing and enjoying some time off in between things. And previously I was at Ning, at Town Squared, and I've been doing community. So I kind of fell into community about 9 years ago. So excited to give the thoughts on this topic today.
Hi everybody, my name is Christy Fedora, and I am a senior community manager, but I have started up my own consultancy business a year ago, so I am president of my company called The Perfect Circle, and I'm based in London. Nice to be with you today.
Excellent. And hey, everybody, I am Brew, Director of Awesome with Be the Change Revolutions, and co-producer here at my community manager. Let's just jump right into question number one here, which is, let me look at the chat. All right, what should a first-time community manager expect on their first day or weeks? And I think we could probably answer this a few ways. One is, you know, like literally you are brand new to the position. Like, what are you going to expect? And then also, you know, like as you're kind of switching up, what you might expect during your first couple weeks. You guys don't remember that far back, do you? It's like we're going to go on the way back machine.
I'll start. No, go ahead, Christy.
Okay, great. So I would say that I think that one of the biggest questions I always have during my interviews when I'm interviewing as a community manager is, what is the definition of the community? And that answer is going to tell you a lot about the things and the definitions and the ideas that you need to be exploring and making come true while once you are in the role. Because every single person in your organization most likely is going to have a different definition. It's kind of important to ask them all what definition that they individually go by. And the reason that that's important is that you need to be able to justify the existence of that community and prove its value over and over and over again. And so you need to keep in mind that you're going to have to constantly change the idea of the definition for the value for each individual stakeholder, which sounds like a nightmare, and I really don't mean it to, because there will definitely be overlaps. You know, you might have a customer support manager saying, oh, well, you know, we just have so much so many calls coming into the call center. We're really struggling to keep up. Okay, so we know we need to focus on self-support there. So we need to tap into our influencers to maybe try and get them to start helping out on the forums or something. And we might be able to hear from marketing that they're short of resources for particular activities. Well, again, that's something we can tap into the community. So really what we're thinking about here is identifying key areas of focus and then making sure that we can prove the value of the community by actually, you know, ensuring that the community is helping achieve those particular goals. So I always tend to concentrate on the definition of the community and then making sure that I understand how each individual person needs to be sold and continuously believing in the community.
Yeah, and I think that rolls right into what I was going to bring up, which is I think especially if you're a first-time community manager, you're coming into a role, you probably have a supervisor, you probably have someone who's giving you some guidance. So the first thing I would recommend that people coming into a community role for the first time do is ask if there is a brand voice guide, if there are guidelines around how we talk about our customers, how we talk about our product, things like that, to really start to get a feel for, okay, what is the voice I'm using? Am I talking as the company? Am I kind of an anonymized face of the company? Or am I talking as myself? Am I one singular person that is a representative of the company but has my own unique voice and can kind of be a little bit more personal? So figuring that out, I think at first is a really, you know, great thing to do and to talk with team members about. If there's not kind of an established voice of the company, voice of the community, to have the conversations with people, to have the conversations with, if you have the chance, a previous community manager there, if it's kind of a backfill position, or with the other community managers on your team, and say, you know, what do you feel the voice of this is? Take a look at it objectively, see how the company, how the accounts are responding to customers. Are you responding kind of from your own Twitter account? Are you responding from a brand Twitter account? Just kind of the semantics like that really help you get a feel for the kind of contributions you'll be able to make.
I'm gonna talk. I'll bring a kind of another perspective, which is maybe your first days in joining, when you're joining a new team. You know, kind of an existing larger community with already existing community managers, and I think you know, I think in that case, if everything's already established, I think you can expect a little bit of a fire hose. You know, and I mean, just open up and start drinking from it, because communities are complex, right? And the older a community is, the more history it has, the more like, oh yeah, that's that guy, here's a good story about him. You know, there's just so much institutional knowledge to pick up, and new passwords to remember. And you know, you know, so I just think be prepared for that, as well as, you know, I think be prepared to start meeting as many people as you can, both in the community, both in the organization, or, you know, client side, because you know, I think you should expect that people are gonna expect a lot out of you, as far as being the keeper of almost all knowledge of the entire company. You know, kind of being that liaison between brand and community. So I think you can also be prepared that it's going to be fast and furious.
That's the exact thing that I was going to say. I mean, I know that, there's sort of like a culture of like people saying, "Oh yeah, I'm so busy, I'm so overwhelmed." But I mean, it's one of those things. If you're not, either A, your company has done such a great job of giving you every single tool possible, and you jumped in and it was super smooth, or you're just not necessarily asking enough questions or really getting down to the depth of it because of the how intense it is. So, just expect that for the first couple of days or weeks, like you're gonna have those times where, I remember the job that I have now when I first started, it was awesome, but at the same time, it's like, I was like, wow, can I really handle this? Do I have the ability to do all this? And then, also expect that you're going to have to ask those questions. You're going to have to ask for help, and you're going to have to come to the table ready to learn, and get blasted in the face with that fire hose.
I will say you don't always have either a mentor or a team when you start out as a community manager. So when my first community manager role, my company didn't necessarily know what community was, even though they were part of a strong business/industry community, but they knew that they wanted to be a part of it and that community was important and that they had a lot of very active and vocal customers, more so on their support side, who were active in the broader industry community. And so because of that, they brought me in. So for me, it was a matter of finding this hangout. To be honest, that's how I got involved with this hangout, and finding other resources and people. Whenever I get started in something new, what I do is I look for people who are said to be doing it right, who I find interesting. So when I got started in social media or in community or in whatever, lately I've been playing on Snapchat, so I'm following people who are really good there. And it's just a matter of having that good example in front of you all the time as well, so being able to see what they're doing and what they're talking about and what they're learning, and kind of piggybacking off of that until you kind of understand how to learn on your own as well.
Exactly. And Sherry, if I can pick up on that point for a second, you said it so perfectly when you had your own example of you were kind of on your own in your own department. You're a department of one. And that is very typical for community managers. We tend to work in isolation in this really funny position where we're straddling, we're completely conflicted 100% of the time because we're beholden to the organization which is paying us, but we feel like we own and manage and belong to the community. So we're always in this terrible position of conflict. And it's really important to be able to strike a good balance and not get lost, not get too pushed over one side or the other, and to be able to bring things back and to keep your perspective. And you need to do that any way that you can. So I love your idea to, just find your resource and stick with it, whether it's virtual or whether it's live and in person. Here in London, my friend Alex Shabar, who's the director of community for Yelp UK, he and I created or set up a Community Managers London Meetup group because we realized that we needed that time to just be together in a pub talking to one another with a beer and saying, I had that exact same situation last week and here's how I fixed it. Or just to vent. It's so important to just, or as we say, bitch. You need a place to bitch. It needs to be a safe place where people understand you, because typically you're in a big room full of people in your organization and they don't understand what you do all day. So find your safe spot, find your place, and it will also not only encourage you to continue your own education, because you're constantly learning by these peers of people who are really, really great at their jobs and who inspire you, but also they're going to be able to to make those connections and to network with them. And it's just incredibly important, because also finally it will make sure that you don't get burned out, which a lot of us can get burned out very quickly. And we need that sort of de-stressing time to avoid burnout.
And I think on the topic of that, one important thing to know that you shouldn't expect in your kind of first days and weeks is you shouldn't expect to know everything. You shouldn't expect to just come in and know everything the first day. There's no manual for how to do our jobs. There might be playbooks, there might be like guidance on how to use the tools, but there's really no manual for like, this person says A, you say B back to them. You really have to just kind of figure that out as you go a lot. And ask people within the company, look at, you know, how previous people have responded at the company have responded to things, and reach out to that network and say, like, I haven't seen this before. Have you? What do you do in this situation? Yeah.
I guess I'll throw in one thing. Like, I hold myself accountable to make sure anybody new coming in is able to work cross-functionally internally. And that's basically, I want to make sure that we have a stakeholder identified in each function, not just marketing, but like operations, finance, revenue, all these folks, and they have someone they can reach out to, and then do like a group dinner, and then make sure it's not just in the office, because people don't tend to share a lot in the office, and just get everybody out. And then they have a buddy system, and I think we mentioned buddy system, and it's not so much mentoring, but it's just like you have someone you can reach out to that you can trust in different functions. Because if you're not working cross-functionally, it's not going to work at all.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Cross-functionally is a huge, huge, huge part of community management. You have to know who you can talk to in every single department, because if you're doing community right, you're going to need to be able to reach out to those people, which is one thing I really love about not being remote personally, just on my note for being internal community manager, is that, well, internal community manager is the wrong word there, but for me, it's really helpful because I'm able to build those relationships when I don't need something as well. So I'm able to joke around with them throughout the day and smile and laugh, walk by, tell jokes, whatever it is. And that really helps me for relationship building, so that when I do need to come to them with, hey, this community member said this or needs that or whatever, it's really easy for me to be able to do that because I have such good rapport with them besides just needing things, which is good. And you can replicate that remotely too, but for me it's easier to do it in person.
So I just want to give it a reminder to everybody who's recently tuned in. Please feel free to tweet us at mycmgr, and any questions you'd love to ask, we're here to answer. Let's just move on to question number 2, which is, what are the best practices on honing in on a community you don't know much about?
Oh, please let me go first. Please let me go first.
Do it.
The number one rule: don't start talking until you listen. And give yourself a time frame, like pick a time frame, a week, for example. You could, you know, as a new community manager, maybe you have been introduced to the community, maybe they know that you're there, and so in which case you can make little small, hi, great to meet you, looking forward to chatting with you more, getting all my plans together, whatever. Let them know you're thinking about them, but then don't jump into conversations, because you will be that guy wandering down the street randomly high-fiving people. Okay? Don't be that guy. Be the person instead who gently joins the conversation so that you're not interrupting it. You understand where the person's come from, because you've been listening for maybe 5 days or 3 days or 10 days. Karen Robinson, who is Director of Social at Ogilvy UK here, she says she always advises her clients to never start talking to their communities for a week. So they need to listen for a week so that they really begin to understand who those people are and where they're coming from. And everybody can have one bad moment on social, right, or in a public forum. So maybe that was just a one-off. Give that guy another chance. Give him more time before you kind of jump in there. So that's my favorite piece of advice.
Yeah, I have to echo that. Definitely talk to people, both like, if you're, so there's 2 ways to look at this. There's looking at it as, okay, you're coming into a community that's already existing and you kind of have to get the lay of the land, or you're starting a new community and you don't necessarily know the community really well. And I think, you know, echoing what Christy just said and echoing what Bruce said earlier, talking to people is the best way to really hone in on that community, and asking them, you know, what do you like about the community? What would you like to improve about the community, for existing communities? Finding, if there isn't already like kind of an epic history document existing for an existing community, start one. Like as you're doing all of this research, start one, because that kind of sense of shared history is a really, really important psychological concept in community building, and you're never going to know everything about that history, but at least kind of having a primer for it and kind of knowing, the big dramas that have happened, the turnovers, the really great things that have happened, people who have gotten married, people who overcame really huge obstacles in their lives. Kind of knowing that shared history of the community really helps to get a sense for what's going on there.
Well, that's why it's so important as community managers that we're constantly documenting stories, because I almost think about it like it's like a logbook in a way, right? Like you just if there's nothing there, all you have, maybe you can dig backwards and try to piece some stories together to learn about your community, but how much easier are things if somebody says, "Here you go." I know it's a lot of PowerPoints, but you'll see those highs, you'll see those lows, and you'll see, you'll learn who these two people are that met in the community and got married, and that's such a great story. And they show up every Thursday, and those are just the things that I think we need to leave, and for many reasons, but like basically just be capturing those stories.
And another thing too, sort of like bouncing off of what Sherry said earlier, like you don't always have a mentor, and like a lot of times we're coming into situations, either you're starting a community or the community manager before you might not have been the best. So a good practice is to get this and to learn all of these stories. Figure out as fast as you can who the rock stars in your community are. Who are those community members that you're going to lean on? Because if you go to them, it goes, you get so much and they get so much. If you just go to them and you're like, "Hey, my name's Dom, and I'm the new community manager here. I just did some peeking around. I've been listening a while, and I could tell that you're a real rock star. You're really important in this community. I'm wondering if I could just sort of pick your brain. What's going on, like what you've seen, who are some other people I should look out for," because then you get like the inside scoop that doesn't have any sort of company bias to it, and then you also create a friend in the community of somebody that goes, holy shit, this person actually cares about me that much and they want to get this information from me, and then you automatically have somebody that's on your side. So if you do sort of slip up, they can be like, "Hey dude, you might want to do this a little different next time," and it's automatically creating a depth in a relationship that you really, really need. So finding those people is massive.
A guideline that I've used internally, I think at Yext, it works, is that internally I ask people to at least meet one new person, have lunch with one new person every week, and then externally talk to at least 3 customers a week. And it doesn't have to be very extensive. It's like what's working, what's not working, and what would you change if you could. So just try to keep those rough guidelines in place.
Yeah, I really like that, Raj. I know my friend Rachel Miller, who works for Pure Matter, does that as well. So she always makes a point to reach out and schedule like a hangout video call or something with at least one person that she hasn't had a significant conversation with at that point.
All right, so our third basic question, we haven't gotten anything in yet, so there are no questions yet, but please, I can see by the viewer count, I know a bunch of you are watching, so if you're also tweeting with us, feel free to ask questions. Our third and final question before we either jump into source questions or talk about CMX is, how can a role of community manager evolve over time? Oh, that's not part of the question. I was going to say it's a tricky little beast, but that was just a Dom code, I think. So.
I mean, that sort of applies, but
it is,
So yeah, so how does it evolve, guys?
Well, actually, I just have a question. Are we talking about you staying within that role, or are we talking about career development? I'm a little unclear.
Both.
Yeah, whatever you want to talk about.
I mean, I think there's so many opportunities for it to evolve, and it depends on kind of the company and depends on the role. Like from my own personal experience, my first kind of community gig was a moderator for a lost wiki, and from there, because I did really great at moderating that one lost wiki, I started moderating other wikis for the company. I started helping with setup for other wikis. I started helping with social recruitment for other wikis. So it's really just about, and that was kind of just in my first role within 4 years, kind of getting all these additional skill sets and eking out into these, really going from just a moderator to a true community manager. So it's really just about making sure you keep yourself open to all of the possibilities in front of you that are there from the community role, because community, as we've talked about so much, is a jack of all trades role. We touch so many spots, we have our fingers in so many different pies, that it's really about figuring out, gaining the new skills and figuring out what you really love. So do you really love the interaction with the customer and taking their feedback and taking that to the product team? Then maybe product manager is actually a good direction for you to go. Do you really love bringing together the top members in your communities and building out programs around them and making them feel special and raising them up? And then focusing on ambassador programs is great for you. Do you really like throwing events? Then that's a direction that's really great for you. So I think there's so much to evolve in specialties, and then really it's looking at kind of the escalation that you can go to from there. And I rambled on a lot there, so I'll let other people talk now.
Well, I was just going to pick up on that point, Crystal, and say, kind of echoing back to what we've all said, Sherry and Dom in particular, about how you need to be talking to people all the way across the organization, because every time you have a conversation with them, they're going to be curious about the community in a different way than the previous person was. And so making those connections means that you'll be able to, as I always say, evangelize your community internally, but then also identify new opportunities for the community which maybe haven't been explored before, or maybe that person hasn't considered that the community can help with. So that is going to enable you to get your fingers into more pies, if we can stick with that analogy, because everybody likes pie. So I think that it's really important to always be listening to those types of things. But also, I love your idea, Crystal, to figure out what you like doing best, and to kind of, because again, we are jack of all trades. We can do lots of different things, but it's typically in your, well, I suppose in some cases where we are lucky, we're allowed to kind of steer our own ships as community managers and kind of focus on the things that we want to focus on. So for example, if you really love events, suddenly you can do more events. If you really love, kind of having that face-to-face time, you can, maybe you can get some travel budget and go out and speak with them, or whatever it is that you really enjoy doing. I recently met, well, last night at my meetup, one of my friends who's a community manager, she's been advising and consulting for about 3 years now, and she came up to me and she said, I want to get back into managing a community. She said, I miss events. I miss talking to people and helping them with their situations. And so I like the fact that you're able to try different things and then focus on the things that you really love, if you're lucky.
I got something from Twitter to bring in here real quick. Here we go. Oops, wrong one. Here we go. So first of all, I just had to bring this up because I thought it was hilarious. Patrick Helen's answer was, if they battle other community managers, then eventually they get enough XP points to evolve. I just agreed at that. Amanda says, in her humble opinion, or just in my opinion, so just in her opinion, it's not humble, community managers are the force that holds together your company's audience. The role can evolve in so many ways. So thanks for that, Amanda. And NYC Paula asks, what do you think the benefit is to one-on-one hangouts versus the feedback you get in focus groups?
So I can like throw in a quick thing there. When I ran product, I noticed that there was a lot of groupthink when it came to focus groups. Usually you get dominant voices and they'd overtake the entire conversation. One-on-one is just an incredible interview. This is why all the detective shows are always one-on-one interrogations.
Yeah, some people are afraid to go against the mainstream, but you'll get their true opinion if you've got them one-on-one because they're not hearing what someone else is thinking.
And not only that, but the people who tend to answer surveys that you send out like that, where you're trying to get information, are the ones who are very vocal anyway. So really, you want to be hearing from the people who aren't so vocal.
Those damn squeaky wheels. They're always getting the grease. Let's see here. Kristen asks, here's a question for the panel. Have any of your roles ever dissolved? And what'd you do next?
Yes.
Yes.
Startups run out of money. Imagine that. And you have to move on. And hopefully you've learned during that role, like Christy said, what you like doing and what you don't like doing. And you can take that as an opportunity to find a role that you really do like doing. For me, in the meantime, I relied back on my front-end development skills and did some freelance there because it's really easy to pick up freelance for front-end development. And I used that to transition into my next role, which became more of actually a product manager role and more of a strategy role.
Yeah, and I think this is where you really, when that does happen, because it does. It's so common. And it's so common that you'll see someone, and then the next time you see them a couple months later, you're like, oh, are you still with X company? And they're like, oh, no, I'm doing my own thing now. I'm looking for things. I don't know how many people that I spoke with yesterday that I didn't know, and how many people that spoke to me didn't know that I was looking. So that's when the importance of building up of kind of having built up your network really becomes important, because the community management field is so tight knit that we all get reached out to about like, hey, I'm hiring for this role. Do you have anyone you can recommend? So making sure that you let people know. And when I was let go from my most recent position, I actually, the next day I had a list of like 20 people that I actually reached out to, and I had this letter that I wrote to them of, this is what I'm looking for geographically, like the type of company, the size of company, definitely not a gaming community, I'm too delicate for those kind of things. And being able to have enough experience to know what you're looking for next, and being able to kind of verbalize that to people that are ready to help you definitely is beneficial in those circumstances.
So
I think that.
Oh, go ahead, Dom.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, the biggest thing with what you do is I think you take you do sort of like a post-mortem thing and figure out why it dissolved. Sometimes it's really simple as money. Sometimes it's a difference of opinion. You don't have the buy-in of the C-suite for all that kind of stuff. Take that and be very diligent when you are looking for something next. Like not just what type of a community, but what happened. Because then if you're super honest with the next people and you're just like, hey, this is what happened. I want to make sure this isn't going to happen again. This is why I think that it did. Let's make sure that it's better than that. Just make sure you take that and learn from that experience.
Well, that dovetails us right into this next question from Lana at GoodBits. Lana asks, so the community manager is a fairly new role there. So how does she show her boss that she's adding value, and what tools are good for measuring this? And I just want to jump in real quick and say, ask the business what they're already measuring to determine success, because chances are you're going to be part of many of those funnels. So I would ask, if you're fielding customer service questions, ask about how they're measuring success in your customer service department. If you're helping, bring people in, right? Like ask about how you can be part of those success metrics. I wouldn't get too caught up with vanity metrics, and this is just my personal belief. I would first start with measuring some shit that matters, where you can show real value right out of the gates. But anybody else have another opinion on that?
Well,
I just felt strong.
yeah, I was going to say, Brew. Well, we all feel strongly about that, because that being able to prove the value of our community is actually what we're supposed to do all day long. So I think that's a great question that you've asked, and don't be afraid if you don't know what to measure or how to measure it. The good thing is, if you don't know and you go to your boss and your boss doesn't really know, you have the ability to measure anything you want. You need to just get started. So if, for example, the whole reason that you've been hired is to get more people in your forum signed up, then start taking some analysis. How many people did we get last week? How many people did we get this week? Let me try doing that this next week and seeing if I get 3 more. Now, once you get 3 more signed up, for example, then you can go to your boss and say, okay, look, this is what I did. Now what I want to do is double that effort and see if I can get 6 the next week. So what you're doing is creating trends. So your boss is going to love that, because if they don't know what you should be tracking, they're going to love any number that you've got. So start giving them the number that you can, and don't feel overwhelmed by, oh, I have to track everything. No, pick one thing and just track that. Later on, once you've got a good handle on track number 1, you start tracking number 2. Start building up from that. And don't be afraid by the fact that your number might be 0, right? So let's say you're supposed to get people in the forum and you've got 0 this week. Okay, that's still a trend. That's still a baseline for you to start with. Don't ever be afraid of the number 0, because it only means you can go up from there.
I think this is like the single hottest topic in community management right now. I see so many people talking about this. I was at Communicon last week, and basically, half the day kind of focused on this question. Jenna Meester did a really great talk on it at CMX yesterday. I've actually kind of writing an article about it for CMX that should be out soon. It was on pause because of the summit. The thing that I think, especially when talking to bosses, when talking to C-suite, is the most important, is figure out what the business goals are and align the community goals with the business goals where it makes sense, because that is going to be the single fastest way to prove the value of community. Because if you align community goals with business goals, then you're aligning the community with actual money coming into the company and showing, because we have this community, we are getting X times more many customers than our competition that does not have a community. So community is the differentiating factor in that. And that's just one example. There are tons of other examples, and like case starts with a D. I can't remember that word. Someone else will throw that word in. Not disbursement, but like for support communities.
Deflection? Are you talking about deflection?
Yes, that's the word. Case deflection for support communities. All sorts of other different things that you can actually tie to bottom line numbers.
Yeah, Joe Cothrell from Lithium always points out that there's like 3 main areas where you can tie community to business objectives, and it's usually either support deflection or general satisfaction or lead generation. So if you're basically, you can look at that and easily apply community to any of those, as long as you know which it is that your company is focused on and what your role is there. But it's definitely hugely, hugely important to be able to communicate your value and to be able to do so in a way that whoever you're communicating to understands. You have to be able to speak their language. Even if it's not your day-to-day language, what you report on needs to be what they understand. You need to be able to explain your dashboard, be able to explain the metrics and the objectives behind them and why they matter, rather than just throwing a bunch of numbers at them, because they get a lot of numbers from every department all the time.
Yeah.
All right,
I'm gonna
flow us into a lightning round of answers here. because we have a handful of questions and about 3 minutes to answer them before we roll into our CMX topic. So we're going to start with, so imagine answering this in about the form of a tweet. Question for the CMGR Hangout panel. I am creating a community manager role from scratch. Any tips to set it up successfully? It's an internal community. That's from Michelle Ockers. Thanks for joining us, Michelle, on a Friday. So anybody got a quick, nice, like, hey, here's the #1 takeaway. Go for it, Christy.
I don't know. I'm not going to give you an answer, unfortunately, because it's such a great piece of content that I'm going to point you to it. If you Google the Bosch story by Tanya Noor-Sobiech on SlideShare, and I'll tweet the link in just a second. Tanya has set up the Bosch internal community and really believes in creating a thriving internal community and what it's supposed to be doing and how she measures it and how she tracks it. It's a fantastic story, so I'll give you the link to that in just a second.
Excellent. And David says he's totally figured out community management. They see me trolling a little cartoon that says, I'll spout simplistic opinions for hours on end, ridicule anyone who disagrees with me, and generally foster divisiveness, cynicism, and a lower level of public dialogue.
That sounds like the perfect presidential strategy right now.
Yeah. And so Jen asks, biggest lesson learned or biggest tip for anyone starting out in a new role? Mine is, when in doubt, leave it out. You know, like sometimes you're trying to be a little bit of a hero, do something funny. You know, if you ever have doubts, okay to take a pause at any time doing community management and not answer in real time, but say, you know what, I'm a little doubtful on this, and let me go check my facts, let me go see what compliance says, what legal says. I think, I don't know, for me, that's probably my biggest lesson. Anyone else have one?
Yeah, find some peers. Find some peers that you can actually talk with.
And Christy, what do you got?
I would say don't go out and buy an expensive tool unless you know what you need it for.
Excellent.
And I would say listen. Just listen.
Yeah, and I would say, like, find the impetus behind the role. Like, why is it there? Is it a backfill? Is there a need behind it? And, you know, who's really driving it? Because that's your champion. Sometimes it's not the hiring manager, but the boss of the hiring manager. So just really finding out who's your champion behind that role.
Right on. And then Nicole, I know I saw you ask about a side convo. Unfortunately, we can't take it right now. She's talking about comparing Marketo and HubSpot. We'll have to probably just save that to another time, or maybe people can tweet you on it. But thank you for participating. So, all right, guys, we got 15 minutes remaining. So tell us about CMX. Who went? What was it like? I got some FOMO right now.
Yeah, so it was my first one, and we're just kicking off community at Yax. So I was completely blown away. First of all, it's just community managers together. I felt like just bringing out a guitar and just start singing with everyone. It was probably one of the best conferences I've been to. The speakers were great. The one thing that David said in his keynote really resonated with me. I came into Yax to fix a lot of the community issues they've had. Great product, not a lot of outreach. And he said something very powerful. It was like, don't try to convince people, just organize the ones that are already convinced. And that really resonated with me.
Yeah, so on kind of the different perspective, I went to the first two, the first one in San Francisco, the first one in New York. I haven't been to the most recent two, so I kind of went to two, took two off, came back for this one. And having seen how it's grown in, I think, the 2 years that David's been running this, and that Carrie Jones, who's a frequent guest on CMGR Hangout here as well, how much she's kind of helped it grow as well, was really amazing. Especially seeing so many first-time attendees like Raj. So many of these people that I spoke to, this was their first CMX Summit. And just getting to a point where we can gather 400 people who are not always the same 400 people in a room together who are bought in on this, invested in this, and really pushing this industry forward was really exciting. And it's always a great chance to connect with people. I think the tone of, it's interesting to see how the kind of the overall theme of the topics has evolved as well in the space of a couple of years. I think the first couple of CMX summits, it was a lot about figuring out what the value of community is, and figuring out what the place of community is, how to working with other teams, working with product teams, advocating for community within your company. And it's really interesting to see that it's evolving to the next step from there. So it's no longer kind of having to explain our place in a company or in the world, but really making sure that community is leading the discussions that it should be leading. That community is taking a guiding role in product, is taking a guiding role in communications, and making sure that community has the seat at the table that it hasn't had previously.
I didn't get to go to CM, obviously, because I live on the wrong continent. But I just have two. I followed the Twitter stream, and I have two tweets that I would like to read out loud, which I thought summed up how radical I thought that the content was at CMX, and how great it was, and how much I was really missing it. So my first one, interestingly, is from Crystal. And Crystal said in this tweet, marketing is no longer a one-way channel, and that's why community is the new marketing. And actually, that came from Meg Murphy. And I thought that was absolutely fantastic, because it shows the correlation of these two ideas, these two massive concepts coming together and starting to appreciate the fact that community can help with the marketing, and that things are totally different now than they were 10 years ago. We've gone from customer success stories and reference programs and case studies to day-to-day management of a group of people who love you more than anybody else. And that's pretty impressive. My second favorite quote was actually a funny one from Vanessa DeMara, who's one of my personal heroes. And Vanessa said, "My favorite community manager saying, I am smiling from my wrist down." Says it all, doesn't it?
And Megan's talk, I think, was really the most controversial of the talks at CMX. I was actually volunteering, which brings me to another point I'll mention after this. So I was volunteering, so I was helping out with writing up some stuff for what will be the blogs afterwards, doing the live tweeting on the CMX handle, and managing. We had a big Twitter wall provided by Tint, so kind of moderating that. So I was seeing a lot of what was coming in, obviously, and I think really Megan's talk it was titled "Marketing is the New Community" or "Community is the New Marketing." I forget which way. Was the most controversial, because it is, marketing is some people see marketing as like a dirty word, or social media as like a dirty word to community, and see it as very like the antithesis of community. But I don't think they have to be. And so it was really, and there were a lot of really good discussions happening afterwards on that topic. I think a lot of community managers are afraid to kind of say, like, no, I like doing the social side. I actually like being involved in that two-way communication. I think that can help build community. So we kind of say it in hushed whispers in small groups. And from a volunteer perspective, to key this into kind of the topic we were talking about today as well, I volunteered because I'm in between jobs, and so laying out, $400 for a conference is not an expenditure I really need to have right now. There were tons of opportunities for volunteers here, for greeting people, for blogging, for helping to stuff swag bags and roll t-shirts the day before. And I really think that for somebody just getting started in community, finding those events happening in your area if you can. If you're lucky enough to be in New York, to be in San Francisco, to be in London, and to be in these kind of hub areas, and volunteering, just doing whatever you can to be in the room, even if you can't kind of take every single thing that's said and put it into practice because you're just getting started. Just being in that room and kind of getting that collective knowledge through osmosis at events like this and Fever Bee Sprint and Communicon and all of the other amazing events that happen that I don't even know about, all of the meetups like Christine's in London, like the Community Manager Breakfast that happened on both coasts, like OC Tribe that happens here in San Francisco and is simulcast, like here, the Community Manager Hangout that happens every Friday. Just doing things to kind of immerse yourself in the industry and the knowledge is really the best way to learn and to start to excel in the field.
I think one thing that validated Meg's talk was that I met a lot of folks. This is my first time, and I met folks all across different disciplines. So I met folks that are doing social media people. There were PR people there. There was business development people there. There were people that were doing UX. So it kind of validated the fact that the community role is very horizontal, and you can then choose specialties, but you can choose also to be very broad. But it completely validated, at least in my mind, this is anecdotal, it wasn't like statistically significant survey that I did, but talking to all these folks, it was really interesting to see how all these disciplines come together just to learn how to do a horizontal type of role.
So I actually retweeted one tweet yesterday from CMX Summit because it's so hard to find tweets that are actually good in context without everything else that you're missing. But I retweeted a tweet from Margot just sharing that a text will never supplant a hug or a kind smile or a head tilt. It just won't do it. And that was from Joe Navarro. And actually, one of the reasons I had massive FOMO yesterday, besides Crystal Snapchatting me videos of my friends at a pub or wherever you were saying hi, was because I was actually really looking forward to seeing Joe at CMX East, and unfortunately there were flight complications, whatever. But I think it's a really good reminder to, whenever you can, get that FaceTime with your community, be able to be in a place where you can give them a hug or have the nonverbal communication. Video helps, but actually face-to-face in person is a big difference for sure.
And I wanted to say one thing that I really liked, and Crystal, when you said that there was a talk that was a little controversial. I remember there was one, and I forget exactly who it was, at CMX East, and everybody was sort of talking about it afterwards. And like it was right on like a lunch break, so everybody was sort of discussing it. One thing that I really do like about CMX is that they don't necessarily shy away from the controversial. It's not always like it's not one of those types of conferences where you can go and you can basically, telegraph everything that they're going to say, and it's like, yeah, I'm basically just here to hang out and drink with my community manager friends. Like they do a really, really good job of making sure that it's bringing up different perspectives and it's creating conversation. Like CMX does a great job with their community because it's not one that you know exactly what they're going to say. So stuff like that is always good because it gets us out of our comfort zone. It gets us into a place where we're actually thinking about other people's ideas to stop us from, getting into to steal something from a hangout I was on earlier, to getting into our like community sweatpants and just taking it really easy and sort of letting ourselves go. It keeps us on our toes.
I think one more takeaway I had was when David said that as a community manager, you have to give up some modicum of control, and you have to empower other folks in different functions in different areas of your company, internally and externally. And that really resonated with me as well, because I like to be super type A. I want to control everything. I want to make sure the message is clear. But it was pretty clear that you have to empower other folks to amplify your message.
Yeah, you're like the orchestrator, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You're the orchestra director.
I think the really big ones like the presentations to recommend. I know they filmed them all, so they will be putting them out afterwards. So I think my kind of top two recommendations would be Joe Navarro, as Sherry said, and to speak to Dom's point about kind of not just having the same voices. Joe Navarro is from the FBI. His whole presentation was on body language, and it was just 20 minutes of like perfectly here. In fact, here we go. Something I learned yesterday. 20 minutes of just perfectly, just packed with information about kind of how you come across and how to come across better and how to read other people. So this is called steepling. And this is the single most powerful gesture that you can do. So that's the big takeaway from that, steepling.
I think that, and you should point out
what happens when you do this, like Mr. Burns? Is that like does that take it up a level? Like,
are you sure this isn't the most powerful gesture? Because I thought it was this, but maybe I'm wrong.
I think
From your community, that's the most powerful.
Another one, Crystal, was the pointing one.
Oh yeah, and another one he brought up was don't ever point with one finger. And this is like if you ever work at Disney, they tell you this. Like you'll never see anyone at Disney pointing with one finger. They point with two. And he actually suggested pointing like this.
Interesting.
Wasn't there something about interlaced fingers too?
Yeah, I forget what interlaced meant. But
we'll have to all watch the movie, right? We'll be able to watch it soon. Right?
Yeah, so that'll be one to watch, and then Jenna Meester's on the value, on kind of advocating for the value, the business value of community. Those are my recommendations.
All right, guys.
I know after, I was just going to say really quick, after CMX East, they also did a really good job putting out blogs on each talk with the highlights. So definitely watch their site for that.
Awesome. All right, guys, we're out of time, but I did want to bring something up, give Sherry the floor for like a second or two, because it's never too early to talk about CMAD. It's starting to get cold, leaves are starting to fall off the trees, so, what do we have to look forward to? I mean, there's the Christmas stuff, but really I look forward to CMAD. Sherry, do you have any announcements about CMAD?
Drew looks forward to sleep deprivation. Yeah, so CMAD, I tweeted out a link, or it's going out shortly, or whatever, but there's a link there to sign up for, just to let us know that you're interested, that you want to participate in a panel, that you want to share your story about how you became a community manager, whatever it is, and we definitely do check in on those. We have probably about half of the panels scheduled out already, which is really great. We're looking to get a little bit more international diversity right now for panel organizers, so definitely looking for that. And other than that, we'll also be opening up sponsorships soon if your brand wants to get involved on that level. And pretty much any way you can think of to get involved, even if it's not listed, just let us know, and we're open to talking about it.
And we tweeted this, but we're also, if you're watching, and we want your feedback on where we should host CMAD this year. So we've been all over the U.S. For the different years, and it's really, we did it in Milwaukee last year. We were talking about we're going to do it in the studio again, and we said, well, let's ask the community. Where should we go, guys? Let us know.
And then one last note before we go off air is that next week we're talking with Lana from Good Bits. Hopefully I said your name right, Lana. I know you're on the Twitter end right now. About what happens when you're on a smaller team and you're wearing way too many hats as a community manager. So we've all been there. That's what we're talking next week.
Sounds like a great topic. All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with us on a Friday, and we'll see you next Friday. Have a great weekend. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.